I hadn't planned to cry in a hotel room, but that's exactly what happened the moment I saw my mother on a live stream, smiling, sipping wine, and tearing me apart in front of our entire family. My name is Maddie Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last 5 years of my life working 12-hour days in real estate to cover my mother's medical bills. Rheumatoid arthritis had taken away her mobility, and I'd stepped in, driving her to appointments, fighting with insurance companies, and draining my savings to make sure she never felt alone. Or so I thought. That night, I was alone in a hotel in Providence, Rhode Island, attending a real estate conference. I'd just kicked off my heels when my cousin Bree texted, "You need to watch this. I'm so sorry." I clicked the link. It was a live stream Bree had casually started during Sunday dinner back home, our mother seated at the head of the table, glass in hand, completely unaware she was being recorded. "Oh, please," my mother said with a theatrical eye roll. "Maddie thinks selling houses makes her successful. She dropped out of nursing school the moment it got hard, and now she's just floating through life like some pathetic failure." The words hit harder than I imagined they ever could. My aunts chuckled. An uncle added, "She always wanted too much credit for doing the bare minimum." They had no idea. No one at that table knew that I'd paid out of pocket for a specialty treatment when insurance denied coverage. No one knew I'd walked away from my nursing degree because mom collapsed at work and needed someone, anyone, to step in. And still, she mocked me, publicly, cruelly, with no hesitation. I sat frozen as my chest tightened, the tears hot on my cheeks, not just because of what she said, but because of how easily she said it, as if none of my sacrifices mattered, as if I'd never existed beyond being a source of money and convenience. When the video ended, Bree texted, "Should I take it down?" I wiped my face and typed, "No." "Leave it up. I'll explain tomorrow." The woman I thought I'd been protecting wasn't just ungrateful. She was someone who enjoyed tearing me down. And now, the illusion I'd been clinging to had shattered for good. How many years have we given away in silence, hoping that sacrifice would eventually earn us love or respect? And when the mask finally slips, when the truth stares us in the face, do we dare to choose ourselves instead? At 27, I had a plan. I was 2 years into nursing school at a respected program in Burlington, Vermont. I was thriving, aced every clinical rotation, volunteered at local clinics, and stayed up late studying diseases most people couldn't pronounce. I didn't just want to be a nurse. I was becoming one. Then, everything changed with a single phone call. My mother, Helen Carter, had collapsed at work. She was rushed to the hospital in Bangor, Maine, where I grew up. The diagnosis: aggressive rheumatoid arthritis. The kind that doesn't kill outright, but slowly steals your ability to live without constant pain. Her insurance barely covered the essentials. The treatments she actually needed cost thousands every month. I remember standing next to her hospital bed, watching her try to mask the panic behind a forced smile. "I don't know how I'm supposed to afford this," she whispered. I took her hand and answered without hesitation, "I'll figure it out. You won't have to worry." That was the day I made a choice, a quiet, life-altering decision that no one outside our little house would ever understand. I withdrew from school, forfeited my scholarships, and moved back home. Nursing would have to wait. My mother couldn't. I needed a job with flexibility and high earning potential. Real estate, of all things, fit both. I got licensed, built a client list from scratch, and started selling homes, first in Bangor, later in Boston, when opportunities grew. I drove her to appointments, argued with insurance reps, filled out forms, fought for every claim. And I paid every invoice, every prescription, every damn premium that kept her treatments going. In the beginning, I believed it was temporary, 1 year, maybe 2, just long enough to stabilize things and return to school. But time doesn't ask permission before moving forward. 1 year turned into 2, then 3. By the 5th year, I was a full-time caregiver and full-time real estate agent, running a business while managing another person's entire life. I was exhausted, but I kept going. Every now and then she'd say, "You've become so responsible, Maddie," and I'd cling to that sliver of gratitude like a lifeline. No one else knew what I had given up. When family asked how school was going, I smiled and lied. Just taking a break. I told myself I'd return, someday, when she was better, when things calmed down, when I could finally breathe again. But someday never came. And still, I waited. For a thank you that never came. For acknowledgement that never arrived. I told myself she was proud of me, that she saw me, that underneath the silence, she understood what I'd given up for her. Then came the video. That live stream shattered everything. My mother didn't see me as a daughter who'd sacrificed her future for family. She saw me as a failure, an embarrassment, someone to mock between sips of wine and smug laughter. That night, I realized the truth. What I had given her wasn't love, it was silence. What I had given up wasn't time, it was myself. And I couldn't do it anymore. By the time I drove home from Providence, the hotel room tears had dried, but the truth clung to my skin like smoke after a fire. I had spent 5 years making excuses for my mother's cruelty, calling it stress, illness, even generational miscommunication. But the video stripped all illusions away. It wasn't a bad day. It was who she was. She didn't respect me. And more devastatingly, she never had. That night, I pulled out a heavy gray folder from my laptop bag. It was labeled Helen Carter, Medical. Inside were 5 years of documentation, receipts, medical statements, mileage logs from appointments, emails with insurance companies, prescription lists, even credit card transactions from the times she couldn't find her wallet. I had kept every detail for taxes. Now they would serve a different purpose, proof. The next morning, I met Bree at a quiet cafe, tucked between a bookstore and an old barbershop. She was already seated, blue hair piled in a messy bun, oversized headphones looped around her neck. As I slid into the booth, she looked up, guilt radiating from her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Maddie," she whispered before I even spoke. "I didn't know she'd say that stuff. I just thought I was capturing family dinner. Nothing serious." I placed the folder between us and flipped it open. "You did me a favor, Bree," I said, voice calm but steady. "You showed me something I needed to see." She blinked in surprise as I walked her through the documents. Every dollar spent, every appointment driven, every piece of my life I'd set aside. Her jaw dropped as the numbers added up. "This is over $100,000, she said quietly. 123,412, to be exact, I replied. My savings, my time, my future. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen from anyone in years. Outrage on my behalf. "And she called you a failure," Bree muttered. "Jesus!" I nodded. "That ends today." Back home, I made calls. Calmly, methodically. First, the insurance company. "Yes," I confirmed. "I'd like to remove myself as the guarantor on Helen Carter's policy. Effective immediately." Then the hospital billing departments, the specialists, the pharmacy. I updated addresses, withdrew payment authorities, and rerouted correspondence. Each step felt like pulling a thorn from my own skin. Painful, but necessary. When I opened my email, I drafted a message addressed to every relative who had ever accepted my mother's version of events, without question. Subject: regarding Helen Carter's care. Dear family, after 5 years of managing my mother's medical needs, personally, financially, and emotionally, I have decided to step back from all responsibilities. Attached is a full record of expenses totaling $123,412. This includes insurance premiums, prescriptions, transportation, physical therapy, and specialist visits, none of which were reimbursed or shared. I make this decision with a clear conscience. Moving forward, she may require your support. Regards, Maddie. I attached the spreadsheet and hit send. The response was swift. Bree texted first. "I'm proud of you. Let me know if you need help." Aunt Diane replied with a single line. Took guts. I'm here. But the rest? Judgment, confusion, accusations. This is your mother. How could you walk away when she's sick? Uncle Ray, you're being vindictive. No one asked what I had endured. No one asked how I was doing. By the end of the day, I had blocked my mother's number, along with every relative who called me selfish. And then came the knock on my door. Through the peephole, I saw her, Helen, standing stiffly, cane in hand, jaw clenched with fury. I didn't open it. You've missed 3 of my calls, she shouted. My insurance card was declined. The pharmacy won't refill my meds. What are you doing? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. I simply said through the door, I'm not doing this anymore. You'll get a letter from the insurance company. Read it carefully. A pause. Then the shrill escalation I'd braced for. Is this about money? After everything I've done for you, you can't just abandon me. And finally, the word I'd never dared to say aloud. Goodbye, Mom. I walked away as her voice grew distant, faded, and finally, silent. That night, I made one final move. I opened my banking app and transferred the money I had saved for her next round of medication into a new account. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to go back to school. Enough to reclaim the life I once planned. Enough to prove, to myself, not her, that I was no failure. Just a woman finally walking away from a fire she'd been quietly burning in for too long. 3 days had passed since I sent the family email. Since then, I'd heard nothing from my mother. Only silence, the kind that wraps around you like fog. But the peace didn't last. I was pulling into the parking lot of a 3-bedroom colonial I had just finished showing in Brookline, Massachusetts, when I saw them. My mother and Aunt Lorraine. They stood near my mother's car like a scene staged for guilt. My mother leaned heavily on her cane, an accessory she only used when she wanted sympathy. Lorraine stood with crossed arms and a tight frown. They had clearly been waiting. My first instinct was to drive off, but something in me was done running. I got out of the car, keys in hand, calm on the surface, storm beneath. Madeline, my mother said, stretching her voice into sweetness. We need to talk. I stayed put. There's nothing left to talk about. Aunt Lorraine stepped forward. Your mother is struggling. Her medication costs have tripled. She's being denied specialist appointments. She's scared. Is that what she told you? I said flatly. She needs your help, my aunt said. Is that what you wanted, to leave her with nothing? The sting in her words was deliberate, but I'd built armor over the past week. What I wanted, I said carefully, was a mother who appreciated 5 years of sacrifice. A mother who didn't call me a desperate failure behind my back. My mother's face paled. What are you talking about? I held her gaze. The video, Mom. The live stream Bree recorded during family dinner. I saw it. I heard every word. A flash of recognition, then immediate defense. Oh, for God's sake, she snapped. That was taken out of context. I was venting. Everyone vents. That doesn't mean anything. Aunt Lorraine looked confused. What video? She didn't tell you? I said, turning to my aunt. There's a live stream of Mom mocking me, laughing at how I left nursing school, dismissing my entire career. That's what she really thinks of me. Lorraine turned to my mother. Is that true? It's being twisted, my mother said quickly. She's exaggerating to make herself the victim. I almost laughed. I'm not the victim, Mom. I'm just done. Her expression changed. Anger gave way to desperation. Her voice softened into a plea I knew too well. I'm your mother, Maddie. After everything I've done for you, how can you turn your back on me? And finally, I snapped. After everything you did for me, I repeated. Let me tell you what I've done for you. I stepped closer. I paid $123,000 for your care. I put my nursing degree on hold. I drove you to every doctor, tracked every refill, fought with every insurance rep. I lost relationships, opportunities, years of my life. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't crack. And what did you do in return? You sat at the dinner table and called me pathetic. You laughed at the career I built to support you. You reduced me to nothing, even after I gave you everything. Aunt Lorraine stood frozen, speechless. I looked at her. She's living with you now, right? A slow nod. Has she asked for money yet? Told you she doesn't understand her insurance forms? Asked you to drive her to the pharmacy? She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. That's what I thought. I turned back to my mother. You made me feel like I owed you my life, but I don't. I gave you more than enough. And now I'm choosing myself. My mother's lip curled. This isn't over. I reached for the car door. You're right. It's not. Because you're going to realize that without someone to save you, the game changes. She raised her voice as I opened the door. You can't just walk away from family. I paused, turned back. Family doesn't walk away from each other, I said slowly. But family also doesn't manipulate, belittle, or exploit one another. So maybe ask yourself, who walked away first? And with that, I drove off. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, I had said everything that needed saying. The burden wasn't mine anymore. 3 months passed in a blur. But for once, the chaos wasn't someone else's. It was mine, and it was purposeful. I aced the placement exam for the accelerated nursing program at Boston City University, and with my acceptance confirmed, I restructured my entire real estate business. No more running all over the state for every listing. I narrowed my focus to high-value properties within city limits. I hired Kylie, a sharp college student with an eye for detail, to assist with scheduling and paperwork while I was in class or at the hospital. It wasn't easy. There were long nights, schedule conflicts, and more than a few moments when I doubted whether I could juggle it all. But for the first time in years, the exhaustion came with a sense of forward motion. I was no longer circling the same drain of obligation. I was building something. For me. By mid-semester, I'd fallen into a rhythm. Classes during the day, showings and client meetings in the evenings, late-night study sessions fueled by cheap coffee, and a renewed sense of purpose. I kept my trophy, the Crystal Award from the Real Estate Resilience Gala, on the shelf next to my nursing textbooks. Past and future, side by side. Then one evening, my inbox pinged with something unexpected. An invitation to be interviewed by the Boston Medical Journal. They were running a feature on non-traditional nursing students, those who'd returned to school later in life or after a career change. I was hesitant at first. My story felt too personal, too raw. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that someone out there, someone quietly putting their dreams on pause for the sake of someone else, might need to hear it. The interview was honest. I spoke about how real estate had taught me negotiation, empathy, and the importance of boundaries. I spoke about caretaking, about sacrifice, about what happens when love turns into expectation, and expectation turns into obligation. The editor called my story unexpectedly powerful. A week later, it was published. And then, of course, my family found it. The phone calls started up again, but not from my mother. It was Uncle Rick, my father's younger brother. We hadn't spoken in years. I read the article, he said quietly. I didn't realize. None of us did. I didn't respond. She saw it too, he added. Your mother. She hasn't said much, but I think it finally sunk in. That you're really doing this. That you're not coming back. I wasn't angry, just tired. I stopped waiting for her to see me, Uncle Rick, he sighed. And yet, I still wanted to say I'm proud of you. The words hit me harder than I expected. Thank you, I said, voice steady. 2 days later, I walked across campus to my clinical rotation at Boston General Hospital. I wore my white uniform for the first time, my name stitched over the left pocket, Eleanor Carter, student nurse. My instructor observed as I started an IV and complimented my technique. I smiled and thanked her. Inside, I was beaming. I didn't tell anyone that I'd cried in the supply room earlier that morning. Tears of disbelief, not sadness. After 5 years of pushing someone else's wheelchair, I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. That night, I came home to find Kylie organizing files at my kitchen table. "Client at 2 p.m. tomorrow in Back Bay," she said. "They're asking for you specifically." "Perfect," I replied, hanging up my coat. "I'll meet them after my pharmacology exam." She raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You really are doing both." "I really am," I said. Later, I made tea and sat down with a new set of study guides. My phone buzzed beside me. A message from Bree. "Your interview hit 20,000 views. Comments are full of nurses saying they cried. You're helping more people than you know." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying, "Maybe that's the point of surviving it, to give someone else the words we never got." I set the phone down, turned to my notes, and kept studying. No spotlight, no apology from my mother, no fairy tale ending. Just a woman, in her own home, chasing the future she almost gave away. It was a Friday night when the call came in. I had just finished reviewing cardiac dosage conversions for a Monday quiz when my phone rang, an unfamiliar number lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, then a third time. I sighed and picked it up. "Maddie, it's Bree. I'm at the hospital. It's your mom." My breath caught. She explained quickly. My mother had suffered a reaction to a new medication, collapsed at Aunt Lorraine's house, and was admitted overnight for observation. "She's asking for you. Uncle Rick says they need her medical history." I closed my laptop and stared at the wall, letting the silence stretch long enough to hear my own heartbeat. There was a time when I would have been in the car before Bree finished her sentence. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. "Is she stable?" I asked. "Yes. I'll come after I finish a few things," I said calmly. "Please let the doctors know I'll be available to answer questions directly." 2 hours later, I walked into her hospital room, not because she demanded it, but because I chose to. My mother was sitting upright, fourth in place, her face flushed with irritation more than illness. "Well, well," she said coldly. "Nice of you to show up." I set my tote bag down and looked her in the eyes. "I came to help the doctors, not to be berated." Uncle Rick, seated in the corner, gave me a look of quiet encouragement. Bree stood near the window, arms folded, watching silently. My mother scoffed. "Don't act like you've been the perfect daughter. You abandoned me." "No," I said. "I stopped letting you use me." She stared at me, her mouth half open. "I supported you for 5 years, financially, emotionally, physically. And when I needed the smallest bit of acknowledgement, you laughed at me in front of the family." "That video was taken out of context," she said weakly. "It was clear. You didn't just vent. You ridiculed me." She said nothing. I pulled the crystal trophy from my tote and set it on the bedside table. "What's that?" "I won an award," I said, "for resilience in real estate, for building a business while supporting you full-time, for surviving everything." Uncle Rick stood slowly and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You've done more than anyone, Maddie. It's time that was said out loud." Bree nodded quietly. My mother said nothing. Not "thank you," not "I'm sorry." And that was fine. I didn't come for closure. I came to confirm one thing. I no longer needed her validation. I stayed 15 minutes, answered the doctor's questions, updated her chart with the correct medications, and left. That night, I came home to a quiet apartment. My uniform was still folded neatly on the sofa. My textbook sat open on the table, untouched. I poured myself tea, sat down, and picked up exactly where I left off. The next morning, I visited my favorite coffee shop before class. The barista smiled and asked, "Nursing school today or open house?" "Both," I replied with a laugh. And just like that, I realized something simple but profound. I didn't need anyone's permission to be happy. Not anymore. Many of us, especially as we age, have been taught that sacrifice is the highest form of love. We give quietly. We carry burdens silently. We believe that if we keep showing up, eventually we'll be seen, appreciated, loved the way we deserve. But sometimes the people we give the most to are the very ones who take us for granted. Maddie Carter's journey reminds us that love without respect is not love, it's obligation. And staying in a place where you're constantly devalued doesn't make you loyal, it makes you invisible. The lesson here isn't about bitterness, it's about boundaries. It's about choosing yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of self preservation. There comes a time when we must stop explaining our pain and start honoring our peace. Whether you're 32 or 72, it's never too late to reclaim your voice, restart your dream, or walk away from what drains you. Life has chapters waiting to be written, but only if you're brave enough to turn the page.